Hi guys, it's Hinda and welcome to Cooking Fantasies. In today's video, I want to share with you this delicious chocolate rolled cake recipe that I made during Christmas days. It tastes so delicious and yet it's very easy to make. We will be preparing a vanilla sheet cake, candied orange and lemon for the filling, and a whipped chocolate ganache. And then we're going to be covering the cake with Rocher Glaze. And as always, I'm going to be providing you throughout the video with all the alternatives, what you could leave out or what you could use instead of another ingredient. So make sure to watch till the end. And if you are new to the channel, I'm going to be leaving you down in the description box all the ingredients you're going to need in both the grams and the cups measurements, as well as a link to the full recipe where you could also print it. So let's get baking, and I'm gonna start by preparing an easy ganache. I do this first because it needs to cool down before we whip it, and this is a very easy ganache recipe. We're gonna be needing some butter, milk, and chocolate. Since I have chocolate that comes in block, I chop it so it melts easier. I also would recommend you to do so if your chocolate comes in block. I'm gonna heat the milk and add it to my chocolate. Allow it to sit for like 5 to 10 seconds and then start stirring till all the chocolate melts. If you still have pieces of chocolate that didn't melt, then place it in a microwave or in a hot water bath until it's totally melted. Then go ahead and add the butter and keep stirring until everything is smooth and your ganache has totally melted. And finally, I'm going to cover my ganache in contact and allow it to cool either in room temperature or in the refrigerator if you need it faster, and it's going to need at least 1 to 2 hours until it's totally cooled. And now that the ganache is cooling, we're going to start making the vanilla sheet cake. It's a very easy one and it always comes out perfect. I have 6 small eggs. You can use 5 medium ones if your eggs are bigger. I started by separating the eggs, so I'm going to keep the egg yolks for later and start working with the egg whites. With the egg whites, we're going to prepare a kind of meringue. So start whipping the egg whites with a pinch of salt until they get foamy, and then we're going to go ahead and start adding the sugar little by little. So I have already measured the sugar I need for the recipe as I left down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding the half of the sugar to the egg whites and the other half to the egg yolks. It doesn't have to be an exact half, it can be a little bit more or less. So we're just going to eyeball it about the half of the quantity of the sugar with the egg whites and work it until we have stiff peaks, and we're going to leave out the other half to whisk with the egg yolks. Once we have a beautiful meringue texture, it's stiff and it holds together, we're going to leave it on the side for later. And now we're going to start beating the egg yolks with the rest of the sugar, about the half like I said. It doesn't have to be exact. And then we're going to whisk everything together till the mixture turns pale or white and thickens. And at this point, I'm going to start adding the rest of the ingredients while continuously whisking. And of course, you can use a stand-in machine. It's even easier. We're going to add the vegetable oil, a little bit of vanilla extract, and the water. Now go ahead and add your sifted flour little at the time while continuously mixing until it's well incorporated. And now for the last step, we're going to start incorporating the egg whites we have prepared into the second mixture. And we're going to do this a little at a time, not all the egg whites at once. We're going to start by a little amount that we can mix in kind of roughly to loosen up the second mixture. And then we're going to go ahead and start adding a little bit of egg whites at the time into the second mixture and fold it in really slowly using these movements from the bottom upwards, kind of to keep all the air we have incorporated. Since we didn't use any baking powder, all the air incorporated in the egg whites is going to give us the nice texture of the cake. For this recipe, it's ideal to use a 38 by 30 centimeters baking tray that's 11 by 15 approximately inches baking tray. You can adjust this if you have a specific baking tray, and it really doesn't matter if it's a little bit bigger or smaller. This will affect the thickness of your rolled cake, but it will not make a huge difference in the recipe. So don't hesitate to use whatever you have. Once you have finished folding all the egg whites into the mixture, you end up with a very nice and smooth cake batter that should be still airy. And as you see, I personally use these frames that I have to make about 38 by 30 centimeters approximately. I also buttered the bottom and the sides of my frame to make sure it comes easier later on when it's baked. The oven must be preheated to 175 degrees Celsius. That's about 347 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to take between 23 to 27 minutes to bake. As soon as my sheet cake is ready and I take it out of the oven, I'm going to place it on a cooling rack so that it doesn't sweat and allow it to cool. The next thing we're going to prepare is candied orange and lemon. And you can either use this recipe that I'm going to show you to make your own candied orange and lemon, or you can substitute with a simple orange jam or lemon jam, but I would prefer either orange or a mixture of orange and lemon. And what I'm going to do is take the peel of lemons and oranges that I have already washed, and it is better if you avoid to use any whites, just this little thin layer of the peels. And then using my knife, I'm going to chop them into the smallest pieces. You can also use a food processor if you prefer to make this faster. Now that I finished preparing all my peels, I have them chopped and ready to go. What we're going to do next is getting rid of all the bitterness and bring up all the aroma and flavors from the peels. How are we going to do this? I'm going to add them to a saucepan, add some fresh water. It doesn't matter how much, they should just cover all the peels. I'm going to bring them on a stove and allow them to simmer for 2 to 3 minutes. Once my peels have boiled for about 2 minutes, I'm going to sieve them, get rid of all the water, put them back into the saucepan, add more fresh water, and repeat the same step. I'm going to allow them to cook or simmer for 2 minutes, sieve them, add fresh water, and I'm going to be repeating this step 3 times. And now that my peels have boiled for at least 2 minutes for 3 times, they should be ready to go, no bitterness left. So now for the last step, I'm going to be adding the water, the amount I have in the recipe, and the sugar, and bring again the saucepan on a medium heat and allow everything to simmer. After the boiling point, you're going to allow them to cook for about 1 minute or 1.5 minutes until the mixture starts thickening. Then I will remove it from the heat and use a blender to mix everything together. The blender helps get rid of the big pieces and have a more like a jam texture, but it's not going to be thoroughly blended and very smooth as a jam. As you see, we still have some pieces of texture, and this is not really bad because when you eat it, you can have this little bit texture in your mouth when you're chewing. It's really nice and it brings this explosion of citrus flavor. Back to the sheet cake, it has already cooled and now it's ready to be garnished. So I'm going to flip it. You want to use the bottom side where the parchment paper was to add the filling, and I'm going to spread my candied orange and lemon peels. And as I said, like you see, it's kind of jam but with more texture, and it's very delicious. If you have the time to make your own candied orange and lemon peels, it's very delicious and totally worth it. You will love it, I'm sure. If not, like I said, you can totally replace it by any other jam that you have at home, preferably orange jam. The other option would be to take about 2 tablespoons from the ganache we have already prepared and is cooling, and spread it with a spatula the same way we did with the candied orange and lemon peels before you whip the rest. And now back to the ganache that has already cooled, and that is why I prefer to make it as a first step before the cake itself, because the cooler it is, the easier it's going to be to whip it. If it's still warm, it's not going to work easier and it's going to require more time whipping it to have a nice texture. If you overmix the ganache, it could turn grainy and not so creamy later on. So make sure not to overmix it. As soon as it starts getting lighter, it's time to stop already, and we're gonna add it to our rolled cake. If you don't like dark chocolate taste so much, what you can use instead is milk chocolate to prepare the same recipe for ganache and then whip it to add it for the filling. Or actually you can use any other of your favorite chocolate frosting, what you would use in other cakes. And if you prefer to use milk chocolate ganache instead of dark chocolate, milk chocolate goes really nice with passion fruit flavor. So I would also recommend you or suggest you to use passion fruit jam instead of orange and lemon. And if you prefer to totally skip the candied oranges and lemon or use any kind of jam for your rolled cake, don't hesitate to add some fresh fruits for more texture and more flavor. You can add strawberries or raspberries, better if they are fresh, to add even more texture to your rolled cake. It's totally up to you. You can use anything you would normally use in your normal cake and into the fridge to sit for at least half an hour before we start making the glaze. The Rocher Glaze is my favorite. It's so delicious and easy to make. We're gonna need chopped chocolate, nuts, and some vegetable oil. You can use any nuts that you prefer. I have almonds. You can use peanuts or anything that you have in hand. I'm going to start by melting the chocolate. You can also melt your chocolate in a microwave, it's the same. And meanwhile, while my chocolate is slowly melting on a hot water bath, and you want to do this slowly, not to burn the chocolate, I'm going to roast my nuts. Once the chocolate has totally melted, I'm going to simply mix all the ingredients together. The vegetable oil, it should be unflavored vegetable oil, whatever you prefer for cooking, and add the nuts and mix everything together. I just removed my rolled cake from the refrigerator. I also removed the parchment paper. As you see, it has nicely set and it's easier to work with. So I'm going to be trimming the sides to have a more nice neat cut. I place it on a cooling rack or whatever you prefer. Even 2 glasses upside down would work before I pour in my chocolate glaze while it's still warm. To decorate or garnish my rolled cake, I have saved some of the ganache. You can save for 1 to 2 tablespoons. They are enough that I'm going to pipe on my rolled cake. And I also mixed together some butter, icing sugar, and Nutella just to have a little bit of contrast to decorate with. It's totally up to you. You can add whatever you want. I also added some hazelnuts, orange peel. I have a lot of rolled cake recipes that I made during the Christmas days, and I'm going to be sharing them with you in the next videos. So make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get them all. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Happy baking!